As Joel touched the thought of Aaron, he remembered the way Aaron looked when he was with Will. "I guess he needs Will the way I need Jim," Joel said out loud. Jim's tail thumped harder. He licked Joel's hand. Then Mom's voice drifted to them again. "Joel!" "Guess I better go," Joel grunted as he scrambled up. "She might start getting anxious." He hurried up through the pasture. Mom was standing on the porch, shading her eyes against the sun. "Where were you?" she asked sharply. Joel's heart ached. Her voice had been like that more than once the last while, sharp, with an edge to it. To Joel it seemed that Mom was not the Mom she used to be. Everything was changing, and nothing, it seemed, was changing for the better. "Oh, just somewhere. What do you want?" he mumbled. Mom's tone turned gentle. "There are lots of berries to pick, Joel, and we need lots of help. Enough help so we can free Elam to do some cultivating. The weeds are growing so fast over by the tomatoes." She spoke quickly and brightly, as though hoping to chase away Joel's gloom. But Joel refused to let his gloom be chased. He hung on to it as he started picking berries. He refused to be cheered by the fact that Mary was a good picker. So was Alan, for that matter. Then Joel saw Elam and Aaron hitching Will to the cultivator. Suddenly he was jealous, so jealous that he said to Mom, who was picking nearby, "That used to be my job." "Which job?" Mom was puzzled. "Leading the horse for cultivating," Joel replied, his voice showing how hurt he felt. "Why, Joel!" Mom was so surprised that she sat back on her heels and looked at him. "I thought you never liked that job, so I suggested Aaron could do it." Joel felt his face grow hot. Mom was right, of course. Had he ever cultivated the garden without complaining? Probably not. Yet now, when his new brother was about to do it for him, he was jealous. Joel was too ashamed to say a word. Then Mom said pleasantly, "Aaron will be happy to pick berries if you'd rather lead Will." Joel shook his head. The hurt and confusion inside him was threatening to spill over in tears. On top of everything else, this made him angry at himself. Why did he have to be such a big baby anyway? All the others seemed to be adjusting without a hitch. Soon he heard Mom chuckling. He looked up sharply. Was she laughing at him? That would be the last straw. Mom never used to laugh at him. At least, never if she knew it would hurt him. But Mom was pointing across the garden. "Just look at Will. It looks as though we have a new horse." Joel turned his head to look. Then he sat back in amazement. Was that Will? Aaron was leading him, and Will's head was up. He was lifting his feet high, and he was pulling the cultivator so fast that Elam could hardly keep up. "All because of Aaron, I suppose," Mother said softly. "I think Aaron must know a secret button to push on that horse somewhere." Joel nodded. He watched the cultivating for a moment longer, then turned back to his berry picking. Seeing Aaron with Will had chased part of his gloom away. But the gloom came back that evening. Evenings had changed, too. For one thing, there were more barn chores to do, and so it was usually later by the time everybody was through. For another thing, George led devotions now. Actually, Joel liked that. It seemed right and proper to have a deep, strong man's voice reading the scriptures. It was what came after devotions that Joel missed. Or, more correctly, what didn't come afterwards anymore. Before, that had been a special time when Joel, Elam, and Mom often sat and talked together. They would talk about ordinary things like garden, school, or wood supply, or they would share concerns. It was during these times that Joel learned what God meant to Mom. She spoke of him as her best friend and her helper for whatever she needed. Now, of course, with a bunch of strangers thrown together in their living room, such special times were a thing of the past. Devotions tended to be quite formal, and right afterwards it was bedtime. As he lay in bed that evening, Joel said to himself, I think I know what the hardest part is for me. It's never having Mom to myself anymore. She belongs to George now, and besides, she has 3 times as many children to look after as before. No wonder she has no time left for me." He could feel sobs pushing at his throat, but he didn't dare let them come. Nothing but a thin wall separated him from Aaron and Alan in the next room. Chapter 27. Aaron's Hayloader. For the first while after the big change, as Joel thought of it, meals tended to be quiet and even a little strained. Mom and George spoke to each other every now and then, but there was no happy chatter from the boys, or from Mary for that matter. She and Aaron sat looking like timid rabbits. Alan wasn't timid. Sometimes he made faces at Mary, who sat across from him. One day at dinner time, Mom and George were discussing something. Suddenly Mary screeched. 7 pairs of eyes stared at Mary. Most of the eyes looked shocked, except for Alan's. His eyes were dancing with mischief. Joel glanced at George. His usually friendly green eyes were quite stern now. So was his voice. "Mary, Alan, what was that all about?"
"Alan kicked me,"
Mary said faintly. George focused on Alan. "You must learn to act decently at the table." Alan nodded and mumbled, "Sorry." George's mouth shut in a straight line, and he said no more. If the atmosphere had been strained before, it was doubly so now. Joel stared unhappily at the piece of pie on his plate. He wasn't sure he could eat it all. After a while, Mom tried to break the tension. "It's nice being done with berries by noon, isn't it, boys? Last year we used to be at it practically all day." "Yes," said Elam, when nobody else volunteered to say anything. Mother went on in the same bright voice. "What are you boys going to do this afternoon? I guess there's no hay ready." Joel looked at Elam. Elam looked at Alan. Alan looked at his plate. It was Aaron who saved the uncomfortable situation. "Dad, have you unpacked your shop tools?" "I unpacked the last ones yesterday. They're all in that little room off the shed with the workbench," his dad replied. "We could make something," Aaron said hopefully, looking at Elam and Joel. "Sure," said Elam. After dinner, he and Aaron headed for the shop. Joel followed more slowly. Alan disappeared. "What can you make?" Elam asked Aaron. "I once made a toy hay loader, but it broke," Aaron offered. Elam was enthusiastic. "Let's make one again. Did it really work?" Aaron nodded. "A little. We loaded grass clippings onto a toy wagon with it. We cranked it by hand." Joel followed them into the shop. He looked around with a feeling of pleasure. What a lot of tools there were! Everything a boy could need to make something. Mom never had many tools. She used to say Dad didn't need many. He wasn't a handyman. Other people had to repair things and make things for him. My new dad, Joel thought, must be different, and Aaron is too. Joel watched in fascination as Aaron took some scrap lumber and set to work. "Spools," said Aaron. "I'm going to need spools, the kind for thread." "There are lots in the toy box. I'll get some." Joel hurried to the house. When he came out again with his hands full of spools, Alan was standing on the porch. "What have you got there?" Alan's voice was hard. "Spools," replied Joel. Suddenly his knees were weak. "What for?" demanded Alan. Joel's voice trembled. "Aaron is making a hay loader." "A hay loader?" hooted Alan. "Last time he made one, it fell apart." Joel lifted his chin. He was scared, but a little angry too. "What does that matter?" he asked defensively. "What does that matter?" mimicked Alan, making his voice sound just as scared and angry as Joel's. "What does that matter?" Joel turned and walked towards the shop. Tears of rage burned inside his eyelids. Why, oh why, had Mother brought this horrid boy into his life? As he went into the shop, Joel thought, "Yet I'm glad Aaron is here, and I couldn't have Aaron without Alan." Aaron took the spools and began fastening them to his little rack with a piece of wire. Joel could see that Elam was just as fascinated as he. It was really something to watch Aaron's hands at work. His nimble fingers seemed to know just what to do. Before long, Aaron said, "There, now do you have a toy wagon? A shoebox will do, too." "How about a nail box?" Elam asked, holding one up. Aaron nodded. He picked up his little creation. Joel had to admit it looked as though it could fall apart. Aaron cradled it carefully as they went out to the lawn. "Now we have to pull some grass and arrange it in windrows like this." Aaron put down the hay loader and began pulling grass. Soon Elam and Joel were helping too. "Now," said Aaron, "where is that nail box?" Carefully he hung the loader onto the box. With his fingers he coaxed the spools to go around. Jerkily, the wires climbed up the rack. Aaron had to help the wisps of grass hang onto the wires. All in all, it was a fairly shaky business, but it worked. Some grass did make its way into that nail box as Aaron inched it along the makeshift windrows. "That's great!" Joel said enthusiastically. "I couldn't have thought up something like that." Aaron looked up from his haymaking. His face glowed. Then suddenly their little bubble of happiness burst. Alan came around the corner of the shop. He took one look at Aaron's creation and asked, "What kind of toy is that?" Aaron looked at his brother fearfully. "Don't! Please don't!" Aaron pleaded. But Alan drew back his foot and kicked the little hay loader. It flew across the grass and landed in ruins. "Alan, what have you done?" All four boys whirled. There stood Alan's dad. Joel cringed. Alan cowered. Dad's iron voice said, "Come with me." Alan followed very meekly. After they were gone, the other three boys sat on the grass, not daring to look at one another. Joel whispered, "What do you think will happen to Alan?" "He's getting a thrashing." Aaron seemed absolutely sure. A jolt went through Joel. 12 years old and getting a spanking? Why, the last time Mom had spanked Joel must have been 2 or 3 years ago. Cold fear clutched at Joel's stomach. If George was spanking Alan, that meant he might spank Joel too. Aaron seemed to guess what Joel was thinking. He reached over to pat Joel's arm. "Don't be scared. He won't spank you unless you're bad." I'm not scared," Joel denied. But he was. So scared his teeth were almost chattering. Chapter 28. Haymaking. "There's a lot of hay ready for today," George announced the next morning at the breakfast table. "I expect I will be raking most of the morning while the rest of you pick berries." 17-year-old Mary spoke up eagerly. "May I help rake too? I could use the other team, and we could borrow Harvey's rake." Joel looked at her in surprise. He had never seen her so eager. A girl, all excited about raking hay? Mary's dad did not appear surprised, but he shook his head. "Harvey's will be using their rake too. That's the trouble. We both have hay for today. We tried to stagger things so that only one or the other of us has hay, but the rain threw our schedule off." He paused, running his eyes over the children. "You must all work fast with the berries this morning. We will need lots of helpers with the hay this afternoon." Joel tingled with excitement. How often he had wished for a chance to help with the haying. Now the time had come. He did wonder, though, what there would be left for him to do if even the girls helped. Aaron's dad had it all planned out by noon. "I talked with Harvey," he said as they ate dinner, "and we decided we would each work on our own hay this time. They have a hay loader and 2 wagons. So do we. They have lots of help. So do we." He smiled at everybody. "Aaron, you can help with the loading. Alan, you're good in the haymow. Elam, do you have any experience running the hay fork up in the barn?" "Not much," Elam admitted, then added hastily, "but I can learn." "I'm sure you can." Then his green eyes rested on Joel. "How do you feel about driving the team in the field?" Joel trembled. "I haven't driven a team very much." "Mary, I think you would make a good teacher for a young lad like Joel," her dad said. Mary's face glowed. "I would enjoy showing him." "We'll be like one big machine. We each have to do our part to make it work," Joel thought happily as he finished his pie. As Alan passed Joel on the porch a few minutes later, he nudged him with his elbow and whispered derisively, "You need a girl to teach you how to drive a team." Joel's happiness was gone, burst like a soap bubble in the air. Yet he couldn't help being fascinated by Mary's way with horses. She was completely unafraid. Joel was awed by these horses like mountains of muscle and energy. The Detweilers had brought 2 matching light brown teams, all with golden manes and tails. Mary and Alan hitched up Jerry and Bill while Joel watched. Then Mary climbed onto the wagon, calling out, "Let's go, Joel!" Joel hesitated. He glanced at Alan, who grinned mockingly, but Alan's dad was not far away, fastening the hay loader to the wagon. Joel swallowed his embarrassment and climbed on. He clung to the front ladder of the rack as Mary clucked to the horses. They were off. "For the first few loads, you can ride along and watch," Mary told him. "That will give you an idea how to follow the windrows and all that." Joel nodded. He could see Mary loved what she was doing. Her eyes shone as she handled the reins, guiding those big horses with only a slight pull to the right or left. "Jerry and Bill are very gentle," Mary assured Joel. "Their mouths are not hard, so they're easy to guide. Besides, they know all about haymaking." Joel managed a crooked smile. "They probably know more than I do." "You'll learn," Mary said encouragingly. And he did. Mary's dad was right. She was a good teacher. Before long, Joel felt quite comfortable with the reins. He also began to feel comfortable with Mary. It wasn't hard to chat with her as they perched on the loads of hay and drove back and forth. "You know," she confided, "I was afraid I wouldn't get to help work in the fields anymore with 2 more brothers in the family." Joel looked at her. It wasn't easy for her to become part of a new family either. The thought was like a bond between them. "I'm glad you can teach me to handle the workhorses," he said shyly. She smiled at him, and the bond was complete. Suddenly Joel realized he was glad he had a sister. By supper time, all the hay had been gathered in. "Everyone worked well," Father praised the family as they ate. Joel felt good all over. The good feeling lingered later on after Joel had done his chores in the barn. Spying Mom alone in the garden, he went over to her. "Doing some weeding?" he asked. "Yes, I could use your help," she replied. They worked in silence for a few minutes. Joel thought, "Here I am, alone with Mom at last, and I can't think of anything to say." Then he remembered Aaron's hay loader. "Mom, Aaron made a little hay loader yesterday." "I heard about that." "Who told you?" Mom smiled at Joel. "Moms and dads tell each other everything, you know." Joel thought about that. He still hadn't gotten used to Mom calling George Dad. He said, "I guess moms and dads like each other a lot." Inside, he felt a twinge of jealousy. "Joel," asked Mom, "do you like yourself?" "Of course." He was mystified. "Well, you see, the Bible says that when a man and a woman get married, it's sort of like they become one person. They are part of each other. So for a mom to like a dad is simply to like herself." Oh. Somehow this did not help Joel's jealousy. Mom went on, "But I want you to know that a mom and a dad's love for each other doesn't take away any of their love for their children. Not one little bit. In fact, the more they love each other, the more they can love their children." "Oh," said Joel again, feeling a little better. "You found out that Alan got a thrashing, too?" Mom looked at him. "Did that make you afraid?" "Yes," he admitted. "You never spanked us any more." Mother's voice was firm. "A spanking comes from a father's love for his son. Remember the verse from Hebrews 12? For whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth. You and your brothers may be thankful you have a father who loves you enough to chasten you." "Yes, Mom," said Joel. He felt a new respect for George as he thought over what Mom had said. After pulling pigweeds in silence for a while, he asked, "Mom, why is Alan so often bad, even if he knows his dad will spank him?" Mother sighed. "I don't know, Joel. It may be because he's having a hard time adjusting to these big changes in his life. I guess it shows up for different people in different ways. We all have to make adjustments, don't we? And maybe it's a little harder for Alan than for the rest of us." Somehow Joel found that hard to believe. To him, Alan seemed like a tough character, not somebody who would have a hard time adjusting. "You and Alan don't always get along, I guess," said Mom with another little sigh. Joel shook his head. "He keeps watching for any chance to make fun of me." "Try not to let it bother you so much," Mom advised, "and remember what Jesus said. Pray for them that despitefully use you." "Yes," said Joel guiltily. He knew he hadn't been doing as Jesus said. So when he knelt by his bed that evening, Joel prayed, "Help Alan and me to get along better, and help us be good." Chapter 29. Another Lesson in Willingness. Right from the beginning, it seemed to Joel the day was off to a bad start. On his way downstairs for breakfast, Alan sped past him and hissed something. Joel didn't even understand what he said, but he was convinced it wasn't anything nice. All morning out in the garden, Joel tried to avoid Alan. Whenever they were near each other, he looked the other way. How mixed up Joel felt. Only last night he had prayed for Alan. He knew he should not be feeling this way toward his new brother, but he did. He wished he had never seen Alan Detweiler. There were so many berries that berry picking was not finished by noon. At the table, George said, "Mom, I guess the boys and I shouldn't all go to Harvey's this afternoon with so many berries left to pick. Would you like 2 of the boys to stay here?" "That might be a good idea," Mom replied with a nod. George's eyes traveled around the table. He smiled at all the boys, then he said, "Joel and Aaron, you may stay home to help Mom and Mary with the berries." Joel was stunned. He almost opened his mouth to object. In the old days, if Mom had said something that seemed unfair, he would have argued, but he didn't dare argue with his stepfather. Joel glanced at Alan. There was a look of glee on his face, and no wonder. Alan got to help with the hay, while Joel had to stay home, bent double in the garden. Joel was seething inside. After dinner he made sure to stay far away from Alan, who was bound to rub in his good fortune if he had the chance. Soon George, Elam, and Alan brought out the team and rumbled off to Harvey's with the hay wagon. Aaron was his usual sunny self when he came out to the garden. "I like berry picking," he remarked cheerfully as he stooped down on the other side of Joel's row. Joel didn't say a word for fear his anger would spill out. He didn't want Aaron to know how angry he was. Maybe it was because Aaron himself never seemed to get angry. After a while, Joel grumbled, "I wonder why Mom and Mary don't come out to help." "Mary's washing dishes," Aaron explained, "and I think Mom is taking a nap." "A nap!" Joel exploded. "Mom didn't used to take naps, not in the busy berry season anyway." Minutes ticked by. The sun seemed to grow hotter and hotter. Still Mary and Mother did not come. Joel found himself growing resentful. "Listen," he said, sitting back on his heels, "I don't see why we should be working so hard in the hot sun when no one else is." Aaron looked up quizzically. An idea had taken root in Joel's mind. "Let's go somewhere where it's cool. To the cave." Aaron frowned. "But Dad said we're to pick berries." Joel hesitated. Would Aaron's dad punish him? Would he dare? After all, George wasn't his dad. Or was he? Joel bent down and picked a few more berries. Then he straightened up again. "I'm going," he said decisively. "Even if you're not, it's not fair that we have to pick berries." He started off across the garden, heading for the pasture. Slowly, Aaron stood up. He looked toward the house. Then he looked at Joel. After a moment, he followed, slowly. It took them only a few minutes to reach the cave. How welcome was its cool shade! The two boys sat side by side on the old couch. Neither of them felt much like talking. Joel was busy thinking, though. He was trying to sort out his mixed feelings. He was remembering how, months ago, he used to wish he were part of a big family, like Harvey's, and he used to wish he had a father. Now his wish had come true. He had a father, and 2 sisters, and 3 brothers, but instead of being glad, he was unhappier than ever. It just didn't make sense. Along with his unhappiness, Joel was starting to feel guilty. The longer he sat there on the couch, the guiltier he felt. He had disobeyed his stepfather, and in doing so, he had probably disobeyed Mom as well. Aaron was the first to say something. "Shall we go back to the garden now?" Joel nodded wordlessly and got to his feet. As they went up through the pasture, they could hear Mom calling, "Joel! Aaron!" "Here we come," Aaron called back cheerfully. Joel felt anything but cheerful. Would Mother scold him? How could he bear that? A scolding on top of all his unhappiness. But Mother didn't scold. She just looked at him in a sad, questioning way that made Joel feel worse. He was miserable the rest of the afternoon. It would have been easier if she had scolded him. Finally, it was supper time, and the men came home. Joel never found out when Mother told George about the afternoon, but after supper, George said gravely, "Aaron and Joel, I want you to come with me." Fear choked Joel's throat. He followed his stepfather to the woodshed. George sat down on a big chunk of firewood. "I hear you were disobedient." His voice was as grave as his face. Aaron nodded. Joel stood there without moving. "You will have to be punished. Mother and I love you and want you to learn to obey. Come, Aaron." Joel wanted to call out, "Don't punish him! It was my fault! I made him go!" But he could not find his voice. Tears streamed down his face as Aaron received his whipping. Then it was Joel's turn. After it was over, George put an arm around each of them and drew them close. The feeling inside Joel was new to him. What was it? He had thought he would be angry if Alan's dad spanked him, but he wasn't. Nor was he afraid any more. Instead, there was relief, and respect, and willingness to obey this man. Never before had he felt so close to his stepfather. Chapter 30. Mom and Dad. Rain fell that night. Berry picking the next morning was a muddy mess. "My trousers are all muddy," Joel remarked across the road to Elam. "So are mine," Elam replied cheerfully. "Well, the berries needed another rain." Joel nodded. "This way we won't need to water them, at least." Elam glanced at Aaron and Alan, who were picking several rows away. "Alan is a good picker. If he didn't reach across the middle and do more than half the row, I think he'd be way ahead of Aaron." Joel said nothing. He didn't feel like talking about Alan's good points. At the same time, he realized it wasn't right to feel that way. Remembering his conversation with Mother a few days ago, he said, "Mom thinks part of the reason Alan is bad so often is because it's been hard for him to make all these changes." Elam looked at him. "You don't believe that?" Joel shrugged. "I don't know." "Well, I believe it because the changes are hard for me, too." "For you?" Joel exclaimed. He'd thought Elam was sailing along, cheerfully taking all the new things in stride. "Yes," responded Elam. "Did you think you are the only one scared of Alan? And sometimes I'm a little scared of Dad, too." Joel didn't know what to say. In a way, it made him feel good to know this. In another way, he wanted to help Elam, too. He told him what Mom had said about moms and dads loving their children. There's a verse in the Bible that says fathers spank their children because they love them, you know. "Yes, I know," Elam responded with a nod. Then he looked up. "Somebody's walking in the lane. Joe Yoder, I think." "Wonder what he wants," Joel said curiously. "He's talking with Mom now." Joe left again soon. Shortly afterwards, Joel purposely walked past Mom with a load of berries. "What did Joe want?" "He came to tell us Ella Miller died. You know, Edwin's grandmother who had cancer." Mom got to her feet. "I'm going to find Dad. We'll probably go to the Millers this afternoon." "Why?" asked Joel. "To help prepare for the funeral." Mom looked at him. "I guess we haven't had a funeral in our neighborhood for quite a few years. Maybe none you would remember. Neighbors always go help when somebody dies." "Oh," said Joel. "So when my dad died, the neighbors came here?" "Yes, they came and were very kind." She patted his shoulder. "That was a long time ago." Then she walked toward the barn in search of the man she now called Dad. Joel knew they wanted him to call George Dad, too. Somehow, though, he hadn't felt like it yet. At the dinner table, Mom said, "Mary, we'll probably be away when Mr. Johnson comes. I expect he'll take most of the berries that are left. He gets them for 10 cents a quart less because he takes so many." "All right," Mary said with a nod. "What should we do with the leftover berries if he doesn't take them all?" "Hull them for canning, I guess. We should be home before supper, so I can help with the canning." Before he left, George instructed the boys to clean out some pig pens. He also warned, "I want you to work together peacefully." And they did. As usual, Alan worked vigorously and got more done than the others. Joel was afraid Alan would call him a slow worker, but he didn't. They were almost finished when Elam said, "What was that? It sounded like thunder." All 4 manure forks paused as the boys cocked their heads to listen. Sure enough, there was a flash of lightning, then a loud rumble of thunder. "Another shower," commented Alan as he set to work again. Joel had a funny feeling in his stomach. He wasn't exactly afraid of thunderstorms. At the same time, he preferred having grown-ups around during one. Yet here they were, 5 children alone on the farm and a storm coming rapidly closer. "Guess we're done now. Shall we go in?" Elam suggested. Joel wanted to say eagerly, "Yes, let's," but he didn't because he was afraid Alan might think him a baby. Alan hung up his fork. "We might as well," he said carelessly. Rain had begun to fall, and the boys pelted through the barnyard as fast as they could. Thunder rumbled directly overhead as they reached the house. Joel's breath came in gasps. He stood close to the kitchen stove, shivering. "I'll stir up the fire to dry out your clothes," Mary offered. She opened the stove and put in some kindling. "There, you'll be warmer now." She smiled at Joel. Joel smiled back nervously. He knew his shivers weren't all from being cold. Perhaps Mary knew that too. At any rate, she suggested, "Shall I read aloud? I found such an interesting book, and I think you would all enjoy it." "Please do," begged Aaron. He wasn't good at reading himself, but he loved when someone read to him. He sat down near Mary on the couch. Mary held up her book. More Stories from Grandma's Attic. "Maybe you boys have read all the stories in here." She looked at Elam and Joel. "Yes, we have, but that doesn't matter," Joel said quickly. He, too, was eager for Mary to read aloud. That way he wouldn't mind the thunder so much. "My, it's dark. Shall I light a lamp?" Mary asked. "A lamp at 3 o'clock in the afternoon?" Alan exploded. Joel held his breath, hoping Mary would go ahead. A light would help shut out the lightning flashes, too. "Well, you'll have to agree it's dark enough," Mary said as she lifted the lamp's chimney and held a match to the wick. Joel pulled his chair closer to the couch. There in the pool of lamplight he felt secure from the rising wind and booming thunder. Mary's voice was soothing as she read aloud. It's nice having a big sister, Joel thought. Gradually the storm faded into the distance, and the sky began to brighten. Mary stopped reading. "I don't think we need the light any longer," she said. With a quick puff, she blew it out. Aaron went to the window. "Dad and Mom will probably come home now that the rain has stopped." Joel joined him, staring out to the road. There was no one coming. He began to watch the clouds. The thunderheads were dwindling away to the southeast. Then he looked toward the northwest. "Look at that!" he exclaimed. "Must be another storm coming." Huge clouds, even darker than the first ones, were boiling up from the horizon and blotting out the patch of blue that had been showing. "Dad and Mom had better hurry," Aaron observed. The storm approached swiftly. The first clap of thunder was so loud it made Joel jump. He glanced over his shoulder to see whether Alan had noticed. Fortunately, Alan's nose was buried in a book. Elam came to the window, too. "I wonder whether Mom and Dad have started off for home." "They'll get caught in the storm," Joel said apprehensively. "If they do, they'll stop in somewhere till it's over. Don't you worry," Elam assured him. But Joel did worry. What if something should happen to Mom? What if— He tried not to think about the things that could happen. Once more Mary lit the lamp as the kitchen grew shadowy. Aaron begged for another story, and Mary read again. This time, though, Joel didn't listen as well. He was too busy thinking about Mom out there in the storm somewhere. After what seemed a long time, the thunder quieted down. Joel hurried to the window. A buggy was driving up the road. Yes, it was Lady. Joel's voice was almost a shout. "Here they come! Here come Mom and Dad!" He felt his face grow warm. Without thinking, he'd called them Mom and Dad. He wondered whether the others had noticed. But nobody had, because they were all so glad to see Mom and Dad coming home. Chapter 31. Closer Than a Brother. There were showers every day for the next 6 days. The rain was good for the strawberries. Even the late-season berries stayed large and juicy. But rain was not good for the hay. It lay in damp rows in the fields, turning blacker and soggier every day. "I wish the sun would shine," Joel complained to Elam one afternoon. They were standing in the hayfield, staring at the sad-looking windrows. "The sun shone yesterday," Elam pointed out. "Yes, then it rained again last night," replied Joel. "I wish we could make hay. That way we'd know what to do." It's hard to know what to play with Aaron and Alan. Elam nodded but didn't say anything. After a while he turned back to the barn. Joel followed. Aaron came running across the lawn to the barn. "He seems excited about something," Joel commented. "Let's find out what he's after," Elam said as he yanked open the barn door. Aaron was heading for Will's stall. "I'm going to ride Will," he said excitedly. "Dad said I may." "Will you ride him on the road?" Elam wondered. "Oh, no, just in the pasture. Have you ever ridden bareback?" Aaron asked. He was in the stall now, putting a halter on Will. "I used to ride one of Harvey's work horses," Elam replied, "but we never rode Lady. Mother didn't want us to." Joel had never ridden a horse, but he didn't say so. He watched as Aaron led Will from his stall. "I used to ride Will when we had him. This used to be his riding halter," Aaron said enthusiastically. The barn door opened and Alan came inside. He stared at Aaron and Will. "So you're going to take a ride on Will the Unwilling?" "He's not unwilling," Aaron said mildly. "Come on, Will, let's go." Indeed, Will did not appear unwilling. Once Aaron was on his back, he picked up his feet and galloped down the pasture. "Look at him go!" Joel cried excitedly. "He can run!" "Huh," said Alan. "He's not much more'n a pony." He turned and went back to the barn. Elam and Joel stayed in the pasture. It was fun watching Aaron and Will. Jim seemed to think so too. He ran along beside Will, barking and barking. Every now and then he ran over to Joel and looked up at him as if to ask, "Did you see that? Isn't this fun?" After a while, Aaron rode back to the gate and dismounted. "Your turn now," he said to Elam. "Okay," said Elam. Joel watched admiringly as he swung onto Will's back. Elam held the little horse back to a slow trot at first, but soon he was cantering too. Aaron stood beside Joel, watching. "Where's Alan?" he asked after a moment. Joel shook his head. "I don't know." "I wish he'd come too. I think he would like to ride," Aaron said. "Shall we go find him?" Joel hesitated. Aaron's eyes shone with eagerness. He realized Aaron really wanted his brother to have a good time too. "Okay," he said, and followed Aaron to the barn to hunt for Alan. The barn door was standing open. Aaron opened his mouth to call Alan. Then he stopped. Out of sight from the boys, they heard Dad's voice. "We want you to get along with each other. You know it is wrong to make fun of your brothers." There was a pause. Joel shivered. Maybe he shouldn't be listening. Then came Alan's voice. "Sometimes they act as if they don't want to play with me." Joel was amazed. He had never dreamed Alan might feel this way. Aaron looked surprised, too. Instinctively, Aaron knew what to do. He ran into the barn, calling, "Alan, where are you? Come and take a ride on Will." Joel smiled and walked away. Aaron was showing his brother he really did want to play with him. Joel saw Elam coming through the pasture gate with Will. Joel ran over, calling, "I think Alan is coming for a ride, too." "Oh?" said Elam in surprise. "See, there he comes." Alan walked out of the barn with his head down and his hands in his pockets. Without a word, he took Will's bridle and mounted the horse. Elam and Joel and Aaron watched Alan riding away. Each of them was wearing a big smile. The next afternoon, Mom asked Joel to help her weed the garden while the other boys worked in the barn. Mary was weeding in another corner of the patch. "You go down that side of the carrot row, Joel," Mom instructed, "and I'll take this side. It's easy to pull weeds when the soil is soft after a rain." "All this rain really makes the weeds grow," Joel observed. "Yes," Mom replied. They worked a while in silence, then she asked, "Did you and the others have a good time riding Will yesterday?" "Yes. Well, I didn't ride, but Alan did." "That's good," said Mom. Joel thought of what he and Aaron had heard in the barn. "Mom, we heard Alan say we don't like to play with him." "I know," said Mom. Joel chuckled. "Of course, Dad told you." After a pause, he added, "It's funny, isn't it? All the time we thought Alan didn't want to play with us." "Do you remember?" Mom asked slowly. "I tried to tell you Alan may be having a hard time with all these changes, too." "I guess I didn't really believe you," Joel confessed, "but I do now." Mom looked toward the barn. "I see the boys are leading Will to the pasture again. He doesn't seem like the same horse when Aaron is around. Why, Will is actually prancing." Joel stopped weeding to watch as Alan mounted Will. "I guess it's a good thing we had that horse." "We've learned a few lessons from him, didn't we?" Mom asked gently. Joel felt his face grow warm. Yes, he had needed those lessons in willingness. Mom went on. "Even though it appears Will has been helping the boys make adjustments, let's not forget who is our best help and our best friend. The Bible says, I think it's in Proverbs, there is a friend that sticketh closer than a brother. Jesus is such a friend to us, closer than a brother. He is always with us, whatever we go through." Joel nodded. He repeated slowly, "Closer than a brother." Then, smiling, he added, "And closer than a horse called Willing." The story you have just heard, A Horse, available as a paperback book from Christian Light Publications, Harrisonburg, Virginia.